Chapter 28 The Life of Gautama Buddha. But now we must go back 3 centuries in our story to tell of a great teacher who came near to revolutionizing the religious thought and feeling of all Asia. This was Gautama Buddha, who taught his disciples at Benares in India about the same time that Isaiah was prophesying among the Jews in Babylon and Heraclitus was carrying on his speculative inquiries into the nature of things at Ephesus. All these men were in the world at the same time, in the 6th century BC, unaware of one another. This 6th century BC was indeed one of the most remarkable in all history. Everywhere, for as we shall tell, it was also this case in China. Men's minds were displaying a new boldness. Everywhere they were waking up out of the traditions of kingships and priests and blood sacrifices and asking the most penetrating questions. It is as if the race had reached a stage of adolescence after a childhood of 20,000 years. The early history of India is still very obscure. Somewhere perhaps about 2000 BC, an Aryan-speaking people came down from the northwest into India, either in one invasion or in a series of invasions, and was able to spread its language and traditions over most of North India. Its peculiar variety of Aryan speech was the Sanskrit. They found a brunette people with a more elaborate civilization and less vigor of will, in possession of the country of the Indus and Ganges. But they do not seem to have mingled with their predecessors as freely as did the Greeks and Persians. They remained aloof. When the past of India becomes dimly visible to the historian, Indian society is already stratified into several layers with a variable number of subdivisions, which do not eat together, nor intermarry, nor associate freely. And throughout history, this stratification into castes continues. This makes the Indian population something different from the simple, freely interbreeding European or Mongolian communities. It is really a community of communities. Siddhartha Gautama was the son of an aristocratic family which ruled a small district on the Himalayan slopes. He was married at 19 to a beautiful cousin. He hunted and played and went about in his sunny world of gardens and groves and irrigated rice fields. And it was amidst this life that a great discontent fell upon him. It was the unhappiness of a fine brain that seeks employment. He felt that the existence he was leading was not the reality of life, but a holiday that had gone on too long. The sense of disease and mortality, the insecurity and the unsatisfactoriness of all happiness descended upon the mind of Gautama. While he was in this mood, he met one of those wandering ascetics who already existed in great numbers in India. These men lived under severe rules, spending much time in meditation and in religious discussion. They were supposed to be seeking some deeper reality in life, and a passionate desire to do likewise took possession of God. He was meditating upon this project, says the story, when the news was brought to him that his wife had been delivered of his firstborn son. This is another tie to break, said Gautama. He returned to the village amidst the rejoicing of his fellow clansmen. There was a great feast and a Nautch dance to celebrate the birth of his new tie. And in the night Gautama awoke in a great agony of spirit, like a man who is told that his house is on fire. He resolved to leave his happy, aimless life forthwith. He went softly to the threshold of his wife's chamber and saw her by the light of a little oil lamp, sleeping sweetly, surrounded by flowers, with his infant son in her arms. He felt great craving to take up the child in one fist and last embrace before he departed, but the fear of waking his wife prevented him, and at last he turned away and went out into the bright Indian moonshine and mounted his horse and rode off into the world.
In the picture, you can see a Tibetan Buddha, gilt brass casting in India Museum, showing Gautama Buddha in the Earth Witness attitude, Indian Museum.
Very far he rode that night, and in the morning he stopped outside the lands of his clan and dismounted beside a sandy river. There he cut off his flowing locks with his sword, removed all his ornaments, and sent them and his horse and his sword back to his house. Going on, he presently met a ragged man and exchanged clothes with him. And so, having divested himself of all worldly entanglements, he was free to pursue his search after wisdom. He made his way southward to a resort of hermits and teachers in a hilly spur of the Vindhya mountains. There lived a number of wise men in a warren of caves, going into the town for their simple supplies and imparting their knowledge by word of mouth to such as cared to came to them. Gautama became versed in all the metaphysics of his age, but his acute intelligence was dissatisfied with the solutions offered him.
A Burmese Buddha, marble figure, marble figure from Mandalay, 18th century work, now in the India Museum.
The Indian mind has always been disposed to believe that power and knowledge may be obtained by extreme asceticism, by fasting, sleeplessness, and self torment. And these ideas Gautama now put to the test. He betook himself with 5 disciple companions to the jungle, and there he gave himself up to the fasting and terrible penances. His fame spread, like the sound of a great bell hung in the canopy of the skies. But it brought him no sense of truth achieved. One day he was walking up and down, trying to think in spite of his enfeebled state. Suddenly he fell unconscious. When he recovered, the preposterousness of these semi-magical ways to wisdom was plain to him. The preposterousness of these semi-magical ways to wisdom was plain to him.
In the picture, you can see the Mech Tower in the Deer Park at Sarnath, 6th century AD, from a painting in the India Museum.
He horrified his companions by demanding ordinary food and refusing to continue his mortifications. He had realized that whatever truth a man may reach is reached best by a nourished brain in a healthy body. Such a conception was absolutely foreign to the ideas of the land and age. His disciples deserted him and went off in a melancholy state to Benares. Gautama wandered alone. When the mind grapples with a great and intricate problem, it makes its advances step by step, with but little realization of the gains it has made, until suddenly, with an effect of abrupt illumination, it realizes its victory. So it happened to Gautama. He had seated himself under a great tree by the side of a river to eat, when the sense of clear vision came to him. It seemed to him that he saw life plain. He is said to have sat all day and all night in profound thought, and then he rose up to impart his vision to the world. He went on to Benares, and there he sought out and won back his lost disciples to his new teaching. In the king's deer park at Benares, they built themselves huts and set up a sort of school to which came many who were seeking after wisdom. The starting point of his teaching was his own question as a fortunate young man. Why am I not completely happy? It was an introspective question. It was a question very different in quality from the frank and self forgetful, externalized curiosity with which Thales and Heraclitus were attacking the problems of the universe, or the equally self forgetful burden of moral obligation that the culminating prophets were imposing upon the Hebrew mind. The Indian teacher did not forget self. He concentrated upon self and sought to destroy it. All suffering, he taught, was due to the greedy desires of the individual. Until man has conquered his personal cravings, his life is trouble and his end sorrow. There were three principal forms that the craving for life took, and they were all evil. The first was the desire of the appetites, greed, and all forms of sensuousness. The second was the desire for a personal and egotistic immortality. The third was the craving for personal success, worldliness, avarice, and the like. All these forms of desire had to be overcome to escape from the distresses and chagrins of life. When they were overcome, when self had vanished altogether, then serenity of soul, nirvana, the highest good, was attained. This was the gist of his teaching, a very subtle and metaphysical teaching indeed, not nearly so easy to understand as the Greek injunction to see and know fearlessly and rightly, and the Hebrew command to fear God and accomplish righteousness. It was a teaching much beyond the understanding of even Gautama's immediate disciples, and it is no wonder that so soon as his personal influence was withdrawn, it became corrupted and coarsened. There was a widespread belief in India at that time that at long intervals wisdom came to earth and was incarnate in some chosen person who was known as the Buddha. Gautama's disciples declared that he was a Buddha, the latest of the Buddhas, though there is no evidence that he himself ever accepted the title. Before he was well dead, a cycle of fantastic legends began to be woven about him. The human heart has always preferred a wonder story to a moral effort, and Gautama Buddha became very wonderful. Yet there remained a substantial gain in the world. If nirvana was too high and subtle for most men's imaginations, if the myth-making impulse in the race was too strong for the simple facts of Gautama's life, they could at least grasp something of the intention of what Gautama called the Eightfold Way, the Aryan or noble path in life. In this there was an insistence upon mental uprightness, upon right aims and speech, right conduct, and honest livelihood. There was a quickening of the conscience and an appeal to generous and self-forgetful ends.